everyone, and thank you for chilling with Millen. Today, I have a new friend of mine that I made this past year. His name is Eric Pickerill, and he is the current senior pastor of Vineyard Columbus, along with his wife, Julia. Eric, thank you so much for chilling with me today.
Hey, Millen, it's great, man. I love it. And your background's amazing.
Thank you.
Couldn't have picked a better one, man.
Exactly. We're going to get into why I chose this here a little bit later. But Eric, I like to start these out with a fun and unique fact. So can you give us one about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I love adventure motorcycles.
Interesting.
So an event, I don't know if you know what those are, but they're large dual sport motorcycles. So you can ride them on the road and ride them on trail.
That's really
So
cool.
so I go on long trips with some guys. There's a growing group of there's a brotherhood, and we'll do these trips through the mountains and camp, and
Yeah.
it's just gets super grungy and dirty and ride through mud, and it's lots of fun.
That is so cool. I have to tell my wife I might want to do that. That sounds adventurous and fun. So
Well, you're close enough. You could join us.
I could
So
join you.
do it.
Exactly. So Eric, I want to set up some context for our viewers today. Eric is somebody that I've heard a lot about. So let's see, maybe about 9 to 10 years ago, I was friends with somebody named Jonathan Rue, and he's still my friend. Shout out to Jonathan if he's watching. Jonathan led a ministry at Vineyard Columbus called Joshua House. I believe, Eric, he took that baton over from you, if I recall.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So just for people that are watching, Joshua House, I think at that time had around 800 something, 820 something year olds, if I'm not mistaken. It was a really cool and powerful ministry. I know it still exists today. I don't think it's called Joshua House anymore.
Yeah,
But anyways,
VC20.
VC20. So
Yeah.
shout out to the VC20 watching.
Yeah.
But I sought John Rue out as a mentor, just a really wise guy. But I remember John would say, Eric and Julia were just such magnetic people, and that you did such a great job just forming that ministry. People gravitated towards you because you were just so authentic, and you truly cared about people. And so I'm like, you know what? I need to meet this man.
Wow.
I need to meet the man.
I need to go hang out with Jonathan more. I just soak it up. All these kind words.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, even having met you last year via Zoom, because we haven't had the pleasure of meeting physically yet, I did sense that authenticity, and I sensed that you cared, and you definitely left an impression on me, Eric. And I hear nothing but great things about Julia as well. So Julia, maybe one day you and I could chill on Zoom too. But that is why I wanted to spend some time talking to you today, Eric, because I think you'd have a lot of insight for our viewers today. So setting that up, Eric, give us a little bit of information about who you are, how you came to Jesus. Give us just a little bit of background.
Yeah, sure. I'm in Central Ohio right now. We're in Columbus. I grew up here since I was 6. And, grew up in a church-going family. My mom's was a committed believer. My dad didn't know the Lord, but still, in that generation, went to church, do the right thing. But I met the Lord through Young Life. So Young Life is a great ministry to high school and middle school students. And so I met Jesus as a teenager in high school, and then actually met Julia through Young Life. So when I went to Ohio State, she was at another university here in Ohio, and we met on a Young Life college leader weekend and fell in love pretty young. Like we were both, I think I was 20 and she was 19 when we met,
So
got
Eric,
married.
They say, is it true they say young life, young wife? They have like this little tagline, right? Because
Sadly, probably true.
Oh, I love it. So you got married, you fell in love early then. That's great.
We did, yeah. You got married early, got married when we were both in college, and yeah, it's been wonderful. So we started out in ministry together. We started when we were in college working at a church, Presbyterian church, doing youth ministry, doing Young Life partnership there, and it was great. And then we met the Vineyard through that experience, actually, Vineyard Columbus, and came into the Vineyard. through John Wimber conference, actually.
Oh,
So
wow.
Wimber
Yeah.
was doing these conferences called Power Healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no background in the Holy Spirit, no teaching on the kingdom of God, no,
Right.
so going to that was like another conversion in a way. Like
Yeah.
it rocked us. And that's how we got involved in the vineyard. And out of that, a bunch of 20 somethings started hanging out. Joshua House formed,
Yeah.
and then, everything got crazy from there.
That is so cool. And I believe even on a personal note, I think you and Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been married over 20 years, right?
Yeah,
Um,
26, I think.
it's amazing, amazing. And
Start
then,
losing count,
yeah,
after a while.
and you have 3 beautiful kids as well. So
Yep.
very cool. So let's fast forward a bit for our viewers and why I chose this background, because you and Julia, you had felt called to plant a church in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, that's
This is
right.
Amsterdam in the background here. So talk to us about that, Eric, because I'm assuming there was a call of God for you to do that. Walk us through that process. Was there fear? Was there trepidations? Talk to us about your experience.
Yeah, loads. Like I never wanted to be a missionary. That was
Yeah,
like the worst thought in my mind, was
yeah,
like that I would have to ask people for support and
yeah.
money and,
Sure.
move my family to another country. Like I was not looking for that at all.
Yeah.
But we started having, it started with a dream. I woke up, Julia had a dream, I had a dream, and it was mostly just, getting our attention. It was, these dreams were clearly from the Lord. Some of your listeners maybe have had that kind of experience, but,
Sure.
it really just got us praying and asking the Lord, what are you saying? What are you doing? And so we just, spent some time really asking the Lord to lead us, and through, a process of, that was over a couple of year period. We didn't just like get up and go to Amsterdam.
Sure.
We, started having conversations with our leaders. So at that time, Rich, Rich Nathan, just shared with him, like, here's some things that are happening. Here's some things that we think God's speaking to us. Can you pray along with us?
Yeah.
And, at the time, the church went through a campaign here at Vineyard Columbus to raise funds to build a community center to reach our city, to serve the most vulnerable in our city, and also to send out 3 international teams,
Okay.
around the world to participate in shaping new faith communities around the world. And
Wow.
and so that was, we ended up being a part of one of those teams and leading a team, and we ended up going to Amsterdam. But there were, I've learned a lot in the process about how God leads and speaks, and that was a very unique time where there was lots of God signs.
Oh, yeah.
It's not it's not a normal thing, like those big moments where
Yeah.
you're making huge decisions about your life, about your future. And I know, your listeners are regularly in those places, like, should I move to this city or that city, and how
Yes.
do I make those decisions? And so that was one of those moments where we learned a lot.
Well, I want to clue in on something you said too, because I think it's really important. You said it's not like you woke up and moved to Amsterdam right away.
Yeah.
It was a process. Sounds like it was a multiple year process. But the other thing I think you did that was really wise, you and Julia, you brought in counsel. You said, hey, Rich, would you be praying for us about this? I mean, you wanted some confirmation. You wanted other leaders to know. So I think those are all valuable steps, right? So you pull the trigger, right? You and Julia say, you know what? This is a call from God. You move to Amsterdam. Talk to us about what that process looked like and how you saw God move through that obedience.
Yeah, well, there were some really significant things. So when we went over to Europe, we really had a sense of a call to Europe, and we had some criteria that you know, uh, we put down. We initially said, like, let's go for 5 years. We knew that we wanted to establish a community, but we didn't want it to be led by Americans at the end of the day. We really wanted something that would be led by, what turned out to be, in Holland, so Dutch folks. But at the time, we just had cities on the map. We wanted to go to, a world-class city, culture shaping city.
Yep.
City where lots of secular folks that were very skeptical about God and maybe very resistant to church. That's where we felt led, and so we explored a few different cities.
Okay.
Dublin, Amsterdam, Brussels. Before we even went to Brussels, though, the Lord really moved pretty clearly. So when we were in Amsterdam, we actually had a very specific word from one of our vineyard leaders in Zambia. We had a Zambian partnership with Damas Kamfwa, and he was visiting Columbus at the time, and he said, "Hey, Eric, when you go," he knew we were going to go explore. We were doing an exploratory trip.
Yep.
And he said, I just, when you're on that trip, he said, I think you need to look for someone that will meet you on the road, that will open doors and speak on your behalf. And he said, like Moses met Aaron on the road. Yeah. And Aaron spoke. So anyway, I was just like, oh, okay. I don't know. And we didn't know anyone where we were going. Sure. But it turns out, when we were in Amsterdam, our last night there, actually, we got a call from a guy who he and his wife ended up being foundational for the planting of the church. And he was, exactly, fulfilled that word. He was running as a member of parliament at the, for a seat in the parliament at the time. He called because he was so busy campaigning, but there are very few Christians, in Amsterdam. Yeah. And he was one who's like a leader, in the city, in the country. Yeah. As a member of parliament, he was able to open doors for us, connect us, speak on our behalf, establish credibility for us. Wow. And because of that, the church flourished, and that's why we decided to move there. But yeah, it was really that partnership, with our team and Dutch folks locally that, sure, that we decided, like, okay, this is where we should be. So let's go to Amsterdam.
That is fantastic. Again, a lot of good things we could take away from this. I mean, for folks watching, you may not be called to Amsterdam, you may not be called to something like that, but like Eric said before, you might, think, hey, maybe I need to move to a different job, or I need to move to a different state, or what have you. You having people that were actively praying for you, I think made all the difference per your story, right? Somebody shared that word with you, and that was encouraging. So it's really important we have people praying for us as we make these big decisions, right? So
yeah, and you got to know that, the bigger the decision, the bigger the cost. Yes. The more that's at stake, the more you want to include outside people, the more you want to include wise people, the more you want to hear from God. Yeah. And the priority list. Like, we had our priority list that we felt like was pretty clear, that we made decisions about. It's like, what kind of city? Well, in a similar way, as you're making big decisions, whether it's moving, it's like, what's on your priority list? And one of them, I would say, should be like, is there, a community there where I can flourish, with God's people? And can I thrive there? Is there, and so those are the kinds of things that, we often don't hear people making decisions based on that. It's like, how much money am I going to get paid? That's right. How great's the city? All of those things. But, there is a way for us as followers of Jesus to kind of prioritize in new ways that I think are important.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Eric. So we fast forward, the church is thriving. You gave that church over to Dutch leadership, if I understand correctly. You felt like God called you back to the States, right?
Yeah.
And here you are now.
Sort of.
Oh yeah, go on. Let's hear the story. So what happened there?
It was actually really hard coming back. And it very often is, that's, whether or not you're a missionary, or someone who's serving intentionally for the kingdom in another place, or you're just living as an expat doing cross-cultural living, it's always, the return is always hard. And so we actually had a bit of a challenge within our family. well, there were two things. One is we went for 7 years. We were able to establish the church.
Oh, wow.
But Julie and I, we loved it so much we would have stayed forever.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
loved it. Like, and that would not have been helpful for the church. So it was good we
Mhm.
left. But
Wow.
we also had family challenges and
I see.
unique challenges that that come up that are so the reason we came back home
Yep.
to Ohio was we have family here, their support,
Yeah.
we were able to, we said, like, what is the best place for our family to flourish and thrive?
Yeah.
What do our kids need? And so that's why we came back here. But I didn't want to come back here because I'm like, it's Ohio. Like, who wants to live in Ohio?
No, that's really good though, Eric, to hear that perspective, because yeah, it sounds like you wanted to set up shop there. You loved it there, but you were doing what was best for your family and what was best for the church, right? Which is fantastic. So I will now shift gears to you pastoring, Vineyard Columbus. So you're back in the States. How did this all happen? I know Rich loves you. I know you're well respected in the Vineyard movement, but does Rich call you into his office one day, you and Julia, and say, hey, you're going to take over? Like, how did this whole thing happen? Because Vineyard Columbus, folks, for folks that are not familiar with Vineyard Columbus, it's not a small church, right? It's a
Yeah.
really big church. I forget how many people, like 10,000 people, Eric, something like that, right? Beautiful campus, so outward focused, all these different nations represented there. I mean, it is not a small undertaking. And Rich Nathan is just like an iconic leader, right? So big shoes to fill. Talk us through that process, Eric. Again, did you guys have dreams? Did you have confirmation, or what made you go all in with this?
Yeah, well, we didn't. Well, first of all, back to your first question, we had conversations with Rich
Okay.
over the years, but not, nothing concrete. I mean, he would joke with me before we left, about pastoring the church when he was an old, decrepit man, and, but it was mostly joking but it became a little bit more serious when we came back. He was like, I'd really like you to come here. And obviously no commitments.
Sure.
And, on his side, because there needed to be a robust process with a leadership team.
Right.
On my side, I was like, I don't really want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to lead this big church. Like, I don't want to follow you. Like, who could do that? But also, like, I like church planting. Like, I've learned, I like being on the front lines with people. I like connecting, and do I really want to lead this big church? And so I really struggled, honestly. And for 2 years, it was dead silence from God. There was nothing. I was praying, asking, nothing. And long and the short of it is, we went out to Colorado. We were going to move out there to work with dear friends of ours, Jay and Danielle Pathick.
Shout out to
They
Jay.
had, they've got a great church out in Denver, and we thought, eventually we could plan out in Boulder with those. A lot of people smoke, some things out there that reminded us of Amsterdam, right? So it's like, we kind of get those people.
Yeah.
We could plant a church, in Boulder or something someday. But when we were out there, we took our kids out there. We were basically trying to sell them on Denver, which shouldn't be that hard because you get the mountains and everything.
Sure.
But it was a weird trip, and we came back, and I looked at Julie and I said, I feel like we just are returning from a short-term mission trip to like the developing world. Like, our daughter was in the hospital on that trip. Our son was, it had this huge snowfall in May. We couldn't even explore all of these weird things. But most significantly for why we stayed here is we were leaving. I was dropping my son off to look at college in Boulder. And as we were leaving there, I was driving back to Denver, and I had a very clear picture of Columbus and Vineyard Columbus.
Okay.
That, what I saw was 10, points of light around our city. And, basically, the long and the short of it, is that the Lord was speaking to me and giving me vision for what Vineyard Columbus could look like and how we could reach our city down the road, which is by planting campus communities around our city,
Yeah.
continuing to extend our mission. So it's just a weird thing because we were out in the place where I thought I wanted to be, and the Lord allowed us to be there to speak to us about the place that we already were.
Gotcha.
And that was a really different way of how he led us to stay here.
That's really cool. And so, what's important with that one is, again, I appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty in that you weren't looking for that challenge. You were looking to be more missional on the front lines. But it seems like, Eric, the common thread is you tend to get visions, right? You tend to get these visions from God. But for folks watching, that maybe don't get visions, that's okay.
Oh,
That's okay, right? I
totally.
mean, some people get a prompting. Some people just feel that still small voice. Some people get encouragement from other believers. So
That's right.
everyone kind of has that sweet spot with the Lord, right? And you start to
It's a
develop
good
that.
word, Millen. That's a good word, man. I'm so glad that you shared that because yeah, there's, like I don't get dreams very often. And
Yeah.
these things are very rare for me. So even as I share these stories, it's like, oh, well, this dude lives like he's some crazy person. Like he just walk around like, like listening to voices, in his head or like,
Yeah.
it's very rare,
I got you.
for me. And again, it's like in the big moments. And I totally agree with you. It's not everyone. Like I
Sure.
believe that everyone hears God's voice, but the way God speaks to us is so,
That's right.
so different,
Yeah.
according to who we are, to meet the moment. So
Absolutely. I'm going to get a little pastory myself, Eric, just because we like illustrations as pastors, right? I mean, we both have 3 kids. I have 3 kids. The way I speak to my kids, it depends on each kid and how they receive that information, right? I don't think it's
yes,
any different with us and the Father.
that's
So,
right.
so
Good
here you
word.
are, you're leading an amazing church, doing a great job. And I do want to shift gears now to the pandemic. We can't conclude a Zoom interview without the pandemic, right? But let's
Crazy.
talk about it, man, because you're somebody who I would value your perspective on this. Eric, I know you see it. I know you hear it more than me, but given all the stuff we're dealing with, all these challenges, I mean, I have a lot of atheist and agnostic friends, and I
Mm,
believe you do too, probably even from living in that proximity in Amsterdam and here. And right now, like given the climate of divisiveness, whether it be race, social justice, LGBTQI plus, anything, right? Um, a lot of my atheist and agnostic friends, they want nothing to do with the church right now. I mean, they see Christians fighting on Facebook, fighting on Twitter, Parler, what have you, whatever your social media platform is. And they're like, these are the people like that you want me to join. And I'm kind of embarrassed right now, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, it is kind of a bad look on followers of Jesus right now from what we're seeing. So given that, Eric, I mean, the gospel, that should be the most compelling news in the world, right? For anyone. But right now it's not being served on a compelling platter. It's almost like it's being served on a trash can lid, And so how do we as followers of Jesus be a part of the solution with this so that we can engage in this dialogue with our agnostic and atheist friends? How do we start? Tough question.
yeah. Well, first off, I don't blame your friends for
Right.
feeling that way, right? For having that attitude. I mean, you mentioned you're embarrassed. For
Yeah.
me, there is a crisis
Mhm.
within certain parts of the church in America.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, those certain parts, for the outside watching world that's not a part of the church or consider themselves Christians or followers of Jesus, it's the whole thing, but the reality is like, it's not the whole thing. So I think, to the degree that, that there are really good people out there
Yes.
that love Jesus that do not fall into all that's on the media
Right.
and
That's right.
that's got the megaphone right now, unfortunately.
Yes.
The second thing I'd say is, to those of your listeners who are followers of Jesus, like, don't give up on the church. Like, the church needs you more than ever.
That's right.
Like, so as a pastor, I'm like, we just got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to shape, ourselves as God's people for this moment. I was just talking with our pastors about that yesterday.
Yeah.
That this has not been, I mean, in addition to the pandemic, who would have thought a year ago that we would have lived through one of the most divisive years in modern American history and had to lead through that. And, and the fact is that, we're recognizing through all of that, that we have to lead in a way that is like the way of Jesus, which both fulfilled faithful expectations from the past. So it fulfilled, all that the prophets had pointed to, but did it in surprising ways. In ways that, so even like in the situation that Jesus showed up in, it was a divisive time, and it was Israel was a mess at that moment. And the way Jesus showed up was very different than these other groups and the way that they were trying to fulfill all of those expectations. And I think, that's what we constantly are trying to do, as the church. And unfortunately, the church in some, communities has really, in my opinion, really gone off course. And it's really unfortunate, because the impact is exactly what you're describing, where the church loses the true and faithful witness of, like, the voice of who we're supposed to be in this moment.
That's right.
And that's a real problem. So we've got some work to do.
Yeah.
So to your friends that are listening, I'm sorry for for what you're experiencing here and hearing from Christians, but it's not the whole. Like,
no.
Don't let this be, because, in a way, it's like, I mean, we experience that with everything, right? It's like, I mean, in a much more extreme example, Muslims, after 9/11 were like, that's not my faith. That is not my faith. And, unfortunately, it becomes that, for Americans are like, well, I hate Islam then, because that, I mean, if that's what Islam is, then forget it.
Right.
Right.
That's a great example, Eric. Yeah. I mean, for people that are watching too, I think I'm checking myself on this too, right? Because it was a divisive year, and emotions are hot. You're isolated at home. I mean, this isn't normal life right now, right? And so sometimes the things that we type and hit send on social media, I guess we just have to ask ourselves, is this glorifying God? Is this representing the church well? Is this representing my faith well? Because if you're a Christian, you have influence and you're a leader, and that's a mantle to carry, and that's something we need to take seriously, right?
That's right.
So anyways, thanks for that insight. So we're gonna wrap it up with this one more pandemic question for you, right? So
okay.
I remember, it's like I have no hair now, right? Back in the day, I had hair, and I had no kids. I was on fire for the Lord. I was serving. I was, doing all these disciplines. Like, I read Richard Foster's Celebration of Discipline, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna do all these disciplines. Check, check, check. And so I had more margin, right? I had more time back then. Then I got kids, and I started getting real sleepy. Right.
Totally, man.
And so now I have 3 kids during a pandemic.
It's gonna get loud next, by the way. You go from sleepy to loud, and then it gets just pure chaos.
It's pure chaos.
And you get sleepy again.
Yes, you're hitting my life right now, right? So I'm talking now, you can relate to this because you have 3 kids. You've been through all this before, but now I have 3 kids. It's the pandemic. My kids are virtual school right now, right? We're wearing all these different hats at home. We're stressed out of our minds. We have so much hitting us. It just feels like there's no margin to do the stuff, right? To actually be obedient, good followers of Jesus. Now, there's obviously a way to do it, but I want you to talk to our listeners that are struggling like I am, right? We're in this boat. We feel depleted. We feel like we're running on empty, but we still want to be effective followers of Jesus and do the stuff. Now, how would you speak to that audience, Eric? Because that's a big audience that you're speaking to right now.
That's a great question. To go back to adventure motorcycle riding.
Yeah.
So, you're on the highway, you're on country roads, but when you get off into a trail, and especially a trail that's not been ridden very much,
that's right.
You slow way down. You drop from sixth gear to third gear to first gear, and it's fun. You're riding over some tough terrain, but it's fun, but you're going slow. You're in a different gear. And I think it's really important, for your listeners, especially, for those with kids right now, because what doesn't help is to stay in sixth gear. Right? Like a lot of my pastoral advice right now is like, I know that, like for those of you who had like 15, 16-year-olds, you guys some of you were like, here's where we're going with college, and here's the way it looks, and pressure's on. Like, take the pressure off, right? Like, yeah. So like the conversations should change. Like you're dropping down a few gears, and in the midst of that, the real challenge is trusting that God is there.
Yeah.
That God's in all of the terrain, that God is, and seeing signs of God, and not just being frustrated that like I'm on this new terrain and it's hard and I'm not used to it. I don't know how to ride this. So just taking some of the pressure off is really important.
So let's get, I love always count on a pastor to give you a good illustration, folks. Right? That's a good illustration. Let's unpack it just a little bit more for our viewers, right? So when we talk about taking that gear down a bit, right? What can that tangibly look like for the single mom with 3 kids? What can that tangibly look like for parents that have to stay home? I mean, give us some handholds a little bit. What could that look like, Eric?
Well, I mean, for one thing, you'd mentioned, Richard Foster and, fulfilling all of the 15 or 20 or 30 or whatever, disciplines there were in that book.
That's right.
A discipline for a single mom might look like taking, 10 deep breaths as you're riding, your kid to school and dropping them off.
That's good. Yeah.
Right. It's like, and just saying like, okay, another deep breath. God is here with me. The Holy Spirit is here with me in this breathing. And I can, as I exhale, I can, think about, with every exhale, one really stressful thing in my life right now. One thing that feels out of control, one thing that I can't do that I wish I could do. And as I breathe in, I'm going to breathe in trust. I'm going to breathe in patience. I'm going to, all of those things. And so, that's part of what I mean. It's like, reading the book, sitting down for, 30 minutes, having quiet time. I mean, different stages of life do that to us, but also, different seasons like a pandemic do that to us, and so people that are struggling with mental health issues right now, like like you're just saying, like a spiritual discipline for me is like I'm gonna reach out for help.
Absolutely.
Like that's a spiritual discipline. Like I'm gonna reach out to my doctor and say I'm struggling right now, and could we talk about that? Absolutely. And so that's what I mean by dropping down gears, and just saying like, I can't, like whatever I was doing a year ago with the Lord, leave it behind. That was a year ago. And that's not to say that in a year it's going to be the same as it is now.
That's right.
But live in this moment. Like, okay, God is here right now. This is my life as it is.
I like that a lot, Eric. It's funny, I was at Target like I forget 2 or 3 months ago, and I was returning something. And anyways, long story short, there was this guy trying to return something, and the person's like, "Oh, I need your password, sir, to return this because you bought it on the app." And he said, "My password is divorce 2020." Okay. And it made me giggle, but it made me really sad too, because
Yeah,
look,
like, wow.
so I'm tying that illustration to this because marriages are in a fragile state during the
Yeah,
pandemic. I mean, I'm hearing it left and right, Eric, right?
yeah,
Divorces, I'm hearing conflict, I'm hearing separation. I mean, whereas in the past, in your example of having that sixth gear, we weren't in the house all the time together, right? We were doing different things, seeing friends, all these things. Now we are just in each other's faces
yes,
all day. And I mean, there's no one in this life I'd rather go through a pandemic with than my wife. Love her to pieces, but at the same time, you're gonna butt heads, man. Okay,
yes,
I don't care if you're
totally.
a pastor. I don't care who you are. You're gonna butt heads.
Yes,
So part of that gear, I love how you said seeking help, Eric. So for people watching that are married and you are struggling right now, get help, get a marriage counselor. Yeah, sometimes there's a wait list right now, because there is actually a wait list for many counselors right now. Get on
yeah,
the wait list,
totally.
right? Talk to other people. Because I'll tell you right now, folks, I can almost guarantee you, if you talk to another friend in a marriage, they're probably struggling just like you are, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
you feel like you're isolated in this, right, Eric? Because people don't tend to talk about their bad baggage or their laundry,
Yeah, exactly.
especially on social media,
That's
right?
right.
It's your best life on social media, right?
Totally.
So I think that's a good word to end with, folks. Adjust those gears right now. Shift, depending on the season of life you're in. You need to recalibrate your disciplines and the way you live, right? And right now we're in a stressful season of life. So I know for me, Eric, one of the disciplines I'm incorporating, you mentioned those deep breaths. I am actually incorporating some mindfulness right now. I'm just
Yeah,
focusing on
good.
my breathing, trying to take some time, inviting the Lord in that process. But I know I have to be more intentional about those stress lowering disciplines and
Yeah,
hitting the brakes a bit, right?
good for you.
So anyways,
That's a good word.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing all those examples, Eric. Is there anything else you'd want to leave our viewers with? Just another call to action or a word before we close out in prayer?
Yeah, just, I mean, I just, keep sharing with my kids, this too shall pass, right? So just,
Yeah,
try to have as much as possible the long view, like keep going. You have a choice,
yeah,
keep using your choice to get back up, to stay in it. Don't allow shame, don't allow yesterday's mistakes or failures to keep you from pressing in
yeah.
and trusting God today. So
Love it. Thank you so much for that, Eric. Would you
thank you,
please
Millen.
close us out in prayer, sir? That'd be appreciated.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Father, thank you for Millen, Lord. I'm grateful for his family. Lord, I'm grateful for his listeners, and
Mhm.
pray, God, that you would meet each one in this season, that you would strengthen them, that you would
Mhm.
sustain them. And I do pray signs, Lord, even as we talk about signs of you, Lord, and in the midst of a pandemic, Lord, I know that there are so many that are struggling with your reality.
Yeah.
And is God even real? And are you who you say you are? And what I've learned about you, and what Christians have called your promises, are they still true, or is this just a bunch of made up nonsense? And I
Mhm.
pray, God, for those that are listening in and struggling with their own faith, God, that you might give grace, you might meet them in ways that are unique to each one, and reveal to them your purposes, your goodness, your
Yeah.
faithfulness to each one. In
Yes.
Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Eric, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for chilling with Millen, man.
Thank you, Millen. Take care.
I'll see ya.